Hi, everybody. How are y'all doing?
Good.
Good, I'm glad. Now we're getting some folks coming in.
Oh, Rabbi.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Rabbi.
Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. It's so nice to see everybody. Feels like it's been forever.
Yes.
I know.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
True.
It's been a long 2 weeks.
And more coming.
Yeah. But it's good to be back. A little centering, hopefully.
Yes.
And a good topic today, Book of Proverbs.
Mm.
When are we doing the book of Job?
That's next, actually.
That's next.
Yeah, that's the next one on the list is Job. So we have Proverbs for a couple, and then we'll do Job, I think, next. Yeah. Some of these great books that aren't often given all the attention they deserve, which makes them fun to study.
Yes.
Did you ever see the play, JB? Get my glasses.
Mhm.
Okay. Excuse me. One of those days, like I actually, I'm in my office, which is nice to be back in the office. There ain't no one here.
You're actually at the temple?
I'm at the temple, yeah.
Gosh.
I wanted to come in for one specific reason, and I didn't get to it. Because I was doing everything else I needed to do as well today. So it's like one of those where I feel very productive, but I still feel like there's a lot of things I still wanted to get done. But them's the breaks.
Yep.
But it's pretty good, though. A lot of good stuff. So
Good.
can't complain. So here's a question for you. And I think it's probably a good room for this question. Does anyone know the meaning of the word seichel?
Sense.
Sense.
Smarts.
Smart.
Renee, how did you know that?
I brought up in an Ashkenazi house.
Yes,
And they spoke Yiddish.
Yeah.
They spoke Seichel, right. I spoke Yiddish. I even knew that.
Is it common sense or just sense?
Usually sort of like more of that common sense, that emerges from, a little reflection, but
Right.
like something that is easy enough to grasp, hypothetically speaking. So it's not really intelligence or as much as it is just having some common sense.
Right.
Yeah. And so I ask that because that's sort of the entrance into the book of Proverbs. That really it could be almost be called the book of Seichel, sort of the book of some sort of like maybe common sense knowledge that maybe we don't always think about, maybe doesn't always come to mind. But the idea that we learn from life experiences, sort of very similar to the other piece of wisdom literature we studied before, Ecclesiastes. You have this idea of, well, we experience the world and what do we learn? What do we notice? What are things that that we learn just from experiencing what's happening around us? It's a fascinating book, Proverbs, for many reasons. But one is that, like Ecclesiastes in a way, sort of similar, it doesn't really deal full-throatedly with mitzvot, with theology. It really is about almost everyday wisdom. And so there are parts, of course, that have a little bit more theology in it, but for the most part, a lot of it is just about the pursuit of knowledge, gaining wisdom, words to live by, a lot of aphorisms that we're going to come upon as we study the text. It is one of three books that is attributed to Solomon. Solomon again writes Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, and Song of Songs. According to tradition, he wrote none of them, but they are all attributed to him. But he did not write a one. Proverbs, we can understand again why that he would be given credit for Proverbs, because it's about wisdom and learning and understanding. And of course, Solomon was supposed to be the wisest king of them all. And so that's why he gets credit for this book. Proverbs may be the book that its authorship spans the greatest amount of time. There's an argument to be made that this book probably came together over about 1,000 years in terms of some of the material that's in it, because it reflects, it mirrors other wisdom literature from other countries, from other parts of the ancient Near East. So there are parts of it that's actually lifted almost from Egyptian works that are much earlier. And so that's why the dating of it is very hard, because some of it does seem maybe 8th century, BCE. Some of it definitely seems later, 3rd, 4th, 5th century BCE, Persian period, Greek period. So it's a really big chunk of time that we're talking about when this book was written. Better even said, compiled, because it is not only an anthology, it is an anthology of anthologies. It is a collection of collections. So there are like 6 different chunks of the books of Proverbs, and each of those chunks are collections of sayings. So that's what I mean when I say it's a collection of collections. So it's very clearly, again, not one author, because this stuff is completely different. And it's not, it would have been nice, it would have been easier if they really demarcated when one thing ended and one began, but it's presented as a chunk. It's presented as 31 chapters of sayings, but there are very easily discernible different parts within the whole, within the 31 chapters. So the first one, which we're going to look at today, the first chunk, the first unit of Proverbs is chapters 1 through 9. And unlike other parts of Proverbs, it's actually longer, almost, they are poems about wisdom. And because it's fun to be confusing, this first part was probably the last part that was written. It probably dates the latest out of the bunch, but it is the first one presented. A lot of imagery. Some of it will be, depending on what we get to, quite interesting, to say the least. And a lot of talk about fear of God at the beginning of wisdom, where in the rest of the book of Proverbs, we don't have as much God talk as we do in this first one. You have to picture in this first section of Proverbs, sort of like the old sage, sitting by a tree with pupils all around him, says, "Let me tell you what I learned, little fellas," and sort of goes off into his ramblings afterwards. That's sort of the imagery that we get from the first unit of Proverbs. He's just going to teach them all of his life's wisdom. The second grouping is really the more famous part of the book, because it is, 10 through 22-ish, a little bit more. The second part of Proverbs, chapters 10 through 22 and a half, let's say. You get a lot of little short, pithy aphorisms, sort of the 1-line, 2-line little sayings that have a rhyme and a rhythm to them, which is more accessible, obviously, in the Hebrew. So you have to sort of think about, an apple a day, keeps the doctor away. That's not in there, but that's, that's sort of an example of what we're talking about. It's 15, 20 chapters, of that really makes up the bulk of the book of Proverbs. And it rhymes in English. If you did that in Hebrew, it wouldn't rhyme. Much in the same way, you have a lot of these expressions, a lot of these ideas that have rhythm and rhyme, a little bit more, parallels in the Hebrew. In the English, again, a little harder. But that's the next group. You get a short little thing here afterwards in the third sort of unit that it begins with, "Bend your ear and hear the words of the wise." It is almost word for word a recasting of the sayings of, here we go, Amenemope is, I think, the pronunciation here, which is a second millennium Egyptian text, which was probably accessible to the Israelites through an Aramaic translation. So gotta love language, gotta love history a little bit. So an Egyptian text gets rewritten to Aramaic, where the Israelites read the Aramaic and then retranslate it into Hebrew. So the fun of language. And this keeps going, there's three more sections. There's one that specifically does mention, as does the first chapter, Solomon. But it says, these are the Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of the court of King Hezekiah transcribed. Probably didn't transcribe it as much as they just wrote it themselves. And they just attributed it to Solomon, is my guess. And then you have some appendix work at the end, 30 and 31 are sort of the, try to put a cap on the whole thing. The very last part of it, there's a very famous poem that, again, maybe this group knows of. And you've never heard of Eshet Chayil? No, okay. No Orthodox households here, maybe, when they were growing up. No? Eshet Chayil is a poem that's read on Shabbat in Orthodox households, where it is in praise of the woman of the house. So the woman lights candles, and as part of the ritual of Shabbat, this will be sung. It is a poem that sort of celebrates the ideal wife, a woman of valor who can find her price beyond rubies. Is that familiar in the English? Yeah. And so that's actually how the thing ends, which is fascinating,
Right.
because as we might see, Proverbs isn't always so great with women.
That's what I thought, that they didn't recognize women so much.
They
Okay,
recognize them, just not
Well,
positively.
Right, that's true.
Rabbi, okay,
Mhm.
on that, a woman of valor, can it only be said on the Shabbat, or can it be said during another?
No, it's usually said on Shabbat, but it's sometimes actually recited at funerals.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
My friend's funeral, they recited that. Yes.
Yeah.
No, the reason I asked, we did that at my mother-in-law's funeral,
Oh,
and afterwards, someone came up and to us and said that was inappropriate to do. It can only be done on the Sabbath. So that's why I asked.
Yeah, no,
Your
I've heard it
mother-in-law.
done at funerals.
My mother-in-law didn't say it, Bonnie.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And so the themes of the book, we spoke, wisdom, discipline, very important, sort of steadfastness, the value of constructive criticism and reproof. Not surprisingly, a few hundred years later, when the rabbis are writing their commentaries, they're going to take wisdom and instruction and understanding and make it synonymous with Torah with a capital T. Whereas probably the author's original intent was not Torah, as in the 5 books of Moses, but just the greater spectrum of wisdom. It's actually, one can argue that, like Job in a way too, but Proverbs in particular has a very universalistic feel to a lot of it, because again, it doesn't have a lot of Israelite theology in most of the book. It's just, again, words to live by. And so it has sort of a broader message. And there was debate, it's all post facto, but it was debate about whether or not to even include it in the canon. That it could have gotten easily excluded, perhaps, because of the attribution to Solomon. That obviously helps. If Solomon wrote it, put it in. It's good. If someone else wrote it, maybe not. But because Solomon wrote it, it's in. I mentioned already sort of the one-liners and the zingers that we'll sort of see probably next week. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to share my screen and we'll jump right in. Hold on, let's make this a little bit bigger. Chapter 1. Renee, you want to give a little read here?
Sure. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and discipline, to fully grasp the words of understanding, to learn from discipline, and thus to understand righteousness judgment, and correct behavior. To give shrewdness to fools and purposeful knowledge to the young, let a wise person hear, and that person will gain insight. Thus, one who understands will attain leadership. More?
Yeah, you keep going.
Okay.
One more.
To understand a proverb, an aphorism, even the words of the wise and their riddles.
Okay, so that's sort of the goal of knowledge, right? That's how they're beginning. That our role is to know wisdom, right? To know wisdom, to know discipline, and to again have a firm hold and of understanding. That we're always supposed to be learning. We're supposed to be gaining knowledge just from our day to day. And that even a foolish person, can learn, as well. And so we having all that knowledge that wisdom is important. Hopefully, we all hear that and gain some insight, and we can keep growing, which is actually what I like here as well. So, like the one who is wise can attain a different level of leadership, and the goal should be again to be able to understand proverbs and aphorisms, to even understand riddles. We should have enough knowledge that we're able to parse these things and have a greater sense of how things work in our world. Okay. Sharon, you want to pick up the fear?
Sure. Let's see where we are.
Right here.
I got it. The fear of the eternal is the beginning of knowledge, while fools despise wisdom and discipline. My child, heed the discipline of your father. Do not let slip away the instruction of your mother, for they are a graceful garland upon your head, a necklace upon your throat.
Okay, let's pause it there for a second. The fear of the eternal is the beginning of knowledge. That is sort of like the big theme of this first unit of Proverbs. Fear I put here very purposefully. It could be translated as awe. I think it just depends on context. I think that for the biblical author, I think maybe they meant more fear, whereas for us in the 21st century, I think we tend more towards reverence of God or awe of God, because that's a little bit more palatable. I imagine in the ancient world, this idea of like fearing God, because if you make a mistake, God's going to give you the zets. I think that's what they were going for, right? Is the idea that, before you learn anything else, you should know. Don't, be blasphemous. Don't go out there, and disregard, the ideas of the faith community. Don't go against God, so to speak. Because if you do that, everything else is sort of moot. You're going to get smacked. You're going to get killed here. If you go the wrong way. So almost like how a child develops in a way. In terms of their development of their ego, of their sense of right and wrong. Like in the beginning, there's fear of getting caught, right? There's fear of punishment, and that's a deterrent. And later on, it's not that as much as their own developed sense of morals and right and wrong. So here, it's like in the beginning, if you nothing else, be afraid of consequences. Be afraid that God's going to give you the lightning bolt. If you screw up. So let's start there, and if you don't, then the next part is the fools, are going to despise wisdom and discipline. They're going to be laughing and mocking wisdom, science. So they're going to, disregard wisdom and discipline. My child, I did some work to try to make this a little bit more gender neutral. They use the word b'ni a lot, my son, and so I've changed it to my child. Sometimes I change it to my young friend, because it's not literally meant to be. I think it's not really meant to be my son. That's the easiest translation. But as I said, you have to almost picture, a guy sitting on a log, on a tree stump, sort of like with a staff, and sort of like talking to a group of people. So I don't think it literally means like father to son. I think it's more like mentor mentee, student teacher, kind of relationship here. So But that being said, he's going to say, listen to the discipline, be attentive to the discipline of your father, right? And here we go. Mom gets in here too, right? And don't slip away the instruction of your mother. Both
Right.
of them are going to be in there. Listen to your parents. It's nice. Remember what they taught us.
Mhm.
I'm sure we all have lessons, that we remember from our parents, that were important to us and are important to us. And I love this next part, honestly. It's a very nice image. That they are a graceful garland on your head, a
Mhm.
necklace about your throat. Throat, it's fine. But the idea being that you almost wear them like badges of
Right.
honor, right? And that people see it, and it's like a beautiful thing, right? It's something that adorns us in a way. It beautifies us. This knowledge, this teaching. I love that imagery, that sort of knowledge somehow, like it just like it, we should wear it proudly, and that it helps beautify us, so to speak, as people. So I like that idea. It's nice. Um, Sharon, you want to pick up over here still? This is
Sure.
the fun part over here.
My child, if sinners entice you, do not yield. If they say, come with us, we will lie in wait to shed blood. For no reason we will ambush the innocent. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive, whole like those who go down into the pit. We shall obtain every precious treasure. We shall fill our homes with loot. Throw in your lot with us. We shall all have a common purse.
I love it because it's like the beginning of a Law and Order episode, like so somewhere in the middle. It really is fantastic. This is criminology 101. This is thousands of years ago, and the rabbis are talking about criminology and sort of the psychology of the criminal mind. So the idea sort of here being that you can just be like on the outside, perhaps, and you run into a gang of toughs. You run into some people who are up to no good, and they're going to entice you to do bad stuff with them. Come with us. We're gonna go beat up some folks. We're gonna cause some havoc and some mayhem. And then again, it's that mind of just the criminal. They're actually imagining what they're gonna do. Right? They're sort of like fantasizing about what they're gonna do to people. That we're gonna like storm them. We're gonna ambush them. And like we're going to be like the gates of hell, where we're going to come and we're going to swallow them alive. We're just going to just destroy them. And really, it's very graphic. It's very vivid, the imagination of a criminal. And then it keeps going. Then we're going to steal them. We'll obtain every precious treasure. We'll fill our homes, with all this treasure and loot. Come with us. Come with us. We'll all share together a common purse. Even though you're new. Even though you're the new kid in our gang, you get the same as everyone else. We'll split it up all together equally. It's just a fascinating insight as to how people can get hooked up into bad dealings, right? So here, there's that literal reading, right, but of what this is, of actual like a gang of ruffians that want to entice somebody and want to sort of lure them into criminal behavior. But what's it also sort of? What do you think the meaning behind the words is for this thing?
Well, this seems to go totally opposite of what it said before about listening to your parents. I mean, this is a total opposite of it.
Yeah, this listening to something else, right? So if you picture your parents sort of as like your good impulse, right? The ones who are the angel on the shoulder. What's here?
This is the devil.
The devil on your shoulder, right? Sort of like and so obviously in Judaism, we're going to have the same sort of angel and devil stuff. It's the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara, right? The good impulse and the evil impulse that are there. And sometimes the evil impulse beckons us and says, hey, give in to temptation. Come, let's do maybe some naughty things. Just a little naughty. It's okay. Won't get caught. We'll do our thing, and it'll be great. It'll be so much fun, and it's just gonna be just like a gas. It's gonna be fantastic to do all this bad stuff. That's what the Yetzer Hara, the evil impulse, sort of says. It tempts us. It beckons us. It says, hey, let's come on and do this stuff together. It's going to be great. But is it great?
Yep.
Not so great. Marilyn, you want to pick up over here, my friend?
My friend, do not set out with them. Wait, I lost my. Okay, keep your
Yes, right.
feet from their path,
Yeah.
but their feet run to evil. They hurry to shed blood. No bird thinks that the net is spread for it. So those who lie in wait to shed blood ambush themselves.
Just fantastic. Okay, so the imagery here, I mean, the imagery here is beautiful. So don't go with them. Don't stay away. Keep your feet far from them. So literally run the other way, right? So they're calling you this way, you go that way. You go the other way, because their feet are running to do evil, and you should run the other way. They hurry to shed blood. But now it's like again. So now it's like your parents that are talking to you. It's like word of wisdom here. No bird thinks that the net is spread for it. It's easy to want to do evil if you don't think what? You're going to get caught. No one thinks they're going to get caught when they're going to do a crime. Everyone thinks they're going to be the one to get away from it. They're going to be the bird flying freely. But that net is there, and it's going to get you. So that's what it's saying here, right? It's very much like a parent talking to a child. That idea that everyone thinks they're going to get away from it. That's why we have criminals. Criminals don't set out thinking they're going to get caught, or else they wouldn't do it. They think they can get away with it. And so in this next line, so those who lie in wait to shed blood, they actually ambush themselves. They're the ones who are going to pay for it in the end. They're thinking they're going to pull the wool over someone's eyes, thinking they're going to get away with it. They're not. They're going to get busted. So by trying to ambush others, they're in fact setting the trap for themselves, as if they're setting up their own net to catch themselves in the act. Just fantastic. Marilyn, you can keep going. Over here, that is the way.
That is the way it is. The one who always takes one's own cut ends up taking one's own life. Wisdom cries aloud in the streets, raises her voice in the squares. At the head of the busy street she calls. At the entrance of the gates in the city she speaks out.
Okay, so so it has that last little line there to end that little part. That as we said, like we'll all share the same purse. One who tries to take one's own cut usually winds up getting cut in a different way. Winds up taking their own life. So if you're looking for your piece, you're looking for your action, you're looking for your part of the loot, it's gonna come to get you in the end. So it ends that little section, and now it's the counter argument, right? It's not the voice of the criminal who's calling out. Wisdom, the personification, the anthropomorphization. That didn't sound right. Wisdom is being anthropomorphized. So here, as a woman, as a person, right? So wisdom is literally walking out in the streets, calling out in the square, trying to get some gosh darn attention, right? Because wisdom is there, right? But no one's paying attention to wisdom. So wisdom has to come out and make her voice heard. And you imagine, again, at the busy streets, people are running and doing, people are going to work, people are going to school, people are running errands, people are just busy, going to the movies, going to get a massage. People are just running out everywhere to do stuff, right? And poor wisdom. No one pays attention to wisdom. So wisdom's going to come and call out and do something. So you could have to imagine wisdom just walking, in the middle of Times Square with a bullhorn, trying to, get some attention here. Linda White, you want to pick up over here?
Where are we?
Fools.
Fools, how long will you love folly? How long will mockers take pleasure in mocking? How long will the stupid hate knowledge? If you turn to my reproof, I will pour my spirit to you. I will make known my words to you.
Okay, a little more.
I did call you, but you refused. I stretched out my hand, but no one was listening.
I'm sorry,
You
but no one was
spoke
listening.
my advice and would not hear my rebuke. I will laugh at your calamity and mock when terror comes upon you.
One more.
When like a storm, what you fear arrives. When like a whirlwind, disaster comes. When trouble and worry get to you.
Okay, so it's fantastic. So wisdom is going to do some scolding here. Wisdom's going to shake the finger a little bit at everybody. How long will you love folly, you big dummies? How long are you going to just, mock everything and be a goon? How long are you going to hate knowledge? What's wrong with you people? And so a little harsh wisdom in the beginning, a little harsh. But then it gets a little bit nicer over here. As I mentioned, a big part of this is constructive criticism. That wasn't very constructive, but constructive criticism, sort of aimed at having people do better, right? And so if you are reproved, right, if you are rebuked and you listen, right, if you actually make an effort to change, then you have a shot. Wisdom is going to pour the spirit, into them, make them more knowledgeable, and you make the words known. But, it's happened. We tried. I called you, didn't listen. No one picks up the phone. It calls, no answer. Stretch out the hand, no one's listening. You're spurning the advice. And so because they're just not getting the point, wisdom's going to sit back, glass of wine, sort of on the porch, laughing at everybody. And saying, look, you doofuses, I'm going to laugh at all your calamity. I'm going to mock you when things go wrong. You know why? Because you should have known better. You dunked your phone in a bucket of water. Why would you do that? I told you not to do that. You don't put your phone in water to clean it, but you did it anyway. So now I laugh at you. Not enough rice in the world to fix it, right? So that's what it's talking about here is you had the opportunity to be smart. You chose not to be. And it's a personal choice. You chose not to learn. You chose to ignore wisdom. You chose to make the bad decision. So then when stuff happens, it's not so pleasant. Wisdom's going to laugh a little bit about it, have a little chuckle. Wisdom has a little bit of what we call Schadenfreude. The pleasure at the misfortune of others. So that's what wisdom's thrown out here a little bit. Okay. Bonnie, you want to pick up here when you call me?
You will seek me, but not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose fear of the eternal. They refused my advice and disdained all my rebukes. They shall eat the fruit of their ways and have their fill of their own counsels. The mischief of fools will slay them, and the ease of dolts will destroy them. But the one who listens to me will dwell in safety and be at rest, fearing no evil.
There you go. And so we have a general sense of this at this point, the idea that they aren't listening, they aren't learning, they refuse the advice. And in the end, what does it come down to, right? It comes down to you reap what you sow, okay? That if you're going to be out there not being so smart, and you're going to engage in mischief and malevolence and everything else, eventually catches up to everyone, right? And they're going to get it, but good. That all your mischief is going to destroy you. All of your laziness and all of your just simplicity is going to eventually be your ruin. But if you listen, you do the right thing, things will be better. Trying really hard not to mention wearing masks right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like it might be in all of our minds, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is chapter 1. Any questions? Let's pick up with chapter 2. I might fast forward to the end to get to chapter 7, only because I want to, scandalize you all a little bit. Chapter 7 is pretty rough. We can, get a glass of an adult beverage to read that one together. Okay. Let's see. Renee, you're on mute. Do you want to read a little more?
My child, if you accept my words and treasure up my commandments, if you make your ear attentive to wisdom, I think that is,
Yeah.
and your mind open to discernment, if you call to understanding and cry aloud to discernment, if you seek it as you do silver and search for it as for treasures, then you will understand the fear of the eternal and attain knowledge of God.
Okay, so that's a good start here. So if you treasure the commandments, the words, commandments here again is probably closer to teachings, I'm guessing, because again, this isn't God talking, this is a parent talking or a sage or a mentor speaking. But the idea, like, listen to what I'm saying, like give ear to everything that I'm telling you, and seek out wisdom. It's a lot, basically it's all the same. The idea of just listen for and seek and pursue knowledge. Because if you do that, then you'll understand the fear of God, why that's important, the awe, the reverence of God. And further, you attain knowledge of God, right? Which is very important and seen as a really primary endeavor for us to be engaged in. It's to try to understand as much as we can the knowledge of God, the highest order of learning, right? Is because if we know God, we know the ways of creation, we know the way that the world is supposed to work. This line is going to get repeated in Jewish philosophy for thousands of years. The idea that we are all seeking in our own way knowledge of God. And so the rationalists, the mystics, the philosophers, the poets, the rabbis, of course, like they're all going to try to have this idea of how do we learn what's the correct path in order to try to connect ourselves to God. What is the wisdom that we need to attain in order to connect, to understand the ways of God as much as we as human beings can understand the ways of God, as we're going to learn with Job. And so, but it's important is the effort, right, to seek it out. It's interesting because we're going to get this more next week as well, but the pursuit of knowledge is just that. It's a pursuit. It's not passive. Like the idea is that you're not just going to be sitting around and get smarter. You have to make an effort to open up the books, to read, to learn, to study, to do. That it's not. It has to be an active attempt to gain this knowledge. Now, where this gets balanced out here a little differently in the first part of the book is that while that is all true, they're going to connect it more to God and God's ability to dispense wisdom. So God is going to be the one who basically has the wisdom and will parcel it out, will mete it out to the worthy, as opposed to us through our own energy and endeavors learning and attaining wisdom. Here it's more connected to the idea of being righteous. That's what we're going to see, and that if you're righteous, you're going to get more wisdom from God. So, so it is connected to our deeds, but in the end, it's God who controls it. God who, it's God, what's the expression? Whose hand is on the spigot. God is able to turn it on or turn it off. You want some wisdom? God will turn it on for you and give you some wisdom. But if you don't earn it, you don't deserve it, it's shut off. And you don't get the wisdom. Okay?
Rabbi, I like the way that it equates the wisdom with silver and treasures.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's really a beautiful passage because for us, in Jewish tradition, that's how much wisdom is prized, that it's supposed to be, like silver, like rubies, like gold, for us. And so it's a really nice image. And people are very passionate when it comes to seeking out the material, right? Seeking out the material goods and pleasures of the world. And in the same way, we should be as excited and assertive and enthusiastic about pursuing knowledge. Very good. Very nice. Okay. Okay, Sharon, you want to pick up over here
Okay.
for the eternal?
Okay. For the eternal grants wisdom, knowledge and discernment are by God's decree. God reserves ability for the upright and is a shield for those who live blamelessly, guarding the paths of justice, protecting the way of those loyal to God. You will then understand what is right, just and equitable, every good course. For wisdom will enter your mind and knowledge will delight you. Foresight will protect you and discernment will guard you. It will save you from the way of evil men, from men who speak duplicity, who leave the paths of rectitude to follow the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and exult in the duplicity of evil men, men whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their course.
Okay. So here we see the difference, right? So when you have knowledge, you're safe, you're protected, which again, feels very relevant. But the idea being that if you are going to listen to wisdom, if you're going to learn to do the right thing, it's going to give you more protection. It's going to be ke'ilu. It's going to be as if it were a shield that is protecting you, which I love the imagery of. I love the beauty of sort of God helping surround, encase us sort of with that divine protection. And it's going to protect us from everything that's going on around us. And in addition to it being a shield, it's going to just allow us to have a greater understanding of what the right path is. It's sort of like you need to be on the right path. God grants you wisdom, so you stay on the right path, and then you learn more about the right path to go. And so I think it's a really beautiful, really nice imagery. And then it says it's going to protect you from all those people around you who want to do bad stuff. It's going to save you from all these evil people, the ones who speak duplicity, the ones who, again, it's a little dark, no pun intended, who follow the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil. It really gives a very negative, understanding there are people out there who want to do negative things and who are just frankly so happy about it. So happy about their cruelty and happy about sort of their working to oppress and hurt other people. But this wisdom helps save you from them. And it's not just the men who's going to save you from Marilyn. Who's it going to save us from?
Why do I get this one? It will save you. It will save you from the forbidden woman, from the alien woman whose talk is smooth, who forsakes the companion of her youth and disregards the covenant of her God. Her house sinks down to death, and her course leads to the shades. All who go to her cannot return and find again the paths of life. So follow the way of the good and keep to the paths of the just. For the upright will inhabit the earth, the blameless will remain in it, while the wicked will vanish from the land and the treacherous will be rooted out of it.
Okay, indeed. So that's our first little journey into some of these wonderful lines here. The forbidden woman from the alien woman whose talk is smooth. This phrase appears, I gotta say, probably about 10 more times in this text. The forbidden woman whose talk is smooth. These smooth talking foreign women. Now, hopefully it is somewhat obvious, but might not be. It's not really, I think, meant to be literal here about women per se. I think it's, again, more metaphor. This idea of evil and wrongdoing being a seduction, right? Of being an infatuation that, so obviously there is a literal translation here, which I think is meant to be there. Well, let's be fair. I think that is there too. But I do think it's also meant to be read more metaphorically as well, that, if we have wisdom, if we have knowledge, we will not be seduced by evil forces, whatever they may be. you know. But here it's getting again the anthropomorphic version of it, of the temptress, the seductress, the succubus, sort of, in a way, that it's going to drag you down to hell. It's going to drag you down, you know, to death here. It's going to take all your energy, and that's going to be it. And then it's going to completely overwhelm and overtake you, and you can't find your way out, right? And so this is, you know, down to the pit, down to Sheol, you know, however one wants to translate it. But it's a little rough. It's a little rough. But again, I think it is meant to be more metaphorical than it is literal. So don't do that, but instead follow the good ways, etc., etc. There's this idea of being uprooted, right? That you want to be in Jewish tradition, especially in the Bible, you'll see the verb for being firmly planted, right? You're supposed to be firmly planted in the earth. That way the winds don't uproot you and take you away. The idea being that if you follow God's commandments, if you live according to God's laws, you're going to be established firmly. Your roots are going to be deep. And so the winds might push you back and forth a little bit, but you're going to remain entrenched in the earth. But if you don't do that, you're going to be very weak, and then you're going to be able to be plucked out and destroyed, like a tree that is uprooted, you know, by a wind. And so with wisdom, we keep ourselves rooted. Wisdom sort of establishes us and makes us firm into the ground. But yeah, so I think that's what it's a very sort of that it's an agricultural metaphor, one of the many metaphors we have here. Sound good?
Good.
Sounds good. Okay. Yeah, I'll be nice. We'll do chapter 3 and not get scandalized by the 7th chapter. You can be scandalized on your own. Okay. Bonnie, you want to pick up over here, my child?
Let your mind retain my commandments, for they will bestow on you the length of days, years of life, and well-being. Let fidelity and steadfastness not leave you. Bind them about your throat, write them on the tablet of your mind. And you will find grace and proper understanding in the eyes of God and humankind. Trust in the eternal with all your heart, and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge God, and God will make your path smooth. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the eternal and shun evil. It will be a cure for your body, a tonic for your bones. Honor the eternal with your wealth, honor the eternal with your wealth and with the best of all your income. And your barns will be filled with grain, your vats will burst with new wine.
Okay, so that's a good run there. So we begin with, again, my child, you know, my friends, don't forget my teaching. Retain it, get it locked in there well. You know, again, those are important lessons, right, that we learn that stay with us forever. Don't let them leave you. Again, almost like you're wearing it as a necklace, as an adornment. But I like this idea of the tablet. You know, it's not an iPad, but it's the tablet of our mind, right? And so when you think about right now, when we write, right, if we're actually writing something, you know, we write in pencil, we write in pen, on a piece of paper. And if we do that and the paper gets lost, we're out of luck, right? You know, you want to write down an address, you want to write down a phone number, whatever it might be, take a note or two. It's on paper. Paper's easily discarded. For them, writing meant something very different, because they might be at that point literally inscribing, right, on a stone, literally carving something, you know, in. And if you do that, you're going to remember it forever, so to speak. That's what I was trying to say. It's that, like, that it's hard to erase when you write on a tablet. You know, it's not like writing on paper. It's a different style. So they're saying it's like, make it indelible in a way, make it indestructible for your mind. And that's going to be very positive for you. Again, a little bit more theology here, but not a ton, just basically trusting God and understand that we don't have all the knowledge, right? God has all the knowledge. We have some, but God is the one who controls it. And that's going to make our lives easier when we understand that. Don't think too much of yourself, right? Don't be wise in your own eyes. but shun evil. If you do that, you're going to feel great. I love this part of it because it goes back to that connection between mind, body, and soul. So you get wisdom, you learn it's a cure for your body, a tonic for your bones. So you'll feel better with some knowledge because you'll know how to take care of yourself maybe a little bit better. That's why you have over here, you get length of days, years of life and well-being. By the way, the only commandment that talks about a reward in the Ten Commandments is honor your father and mother so that you live long. It increases the length of your days and on the land. So definitely that idea of, honor, reverence, wisdom, helps us, live a long and healthier and happier life. And when we honor, God with wealth, when we do the right things, we get a reward, right? This is as much theology as it gets in this book. That your barns will be filled with grain, your vats will burst with new wine, bread and booze for everybody. Everyone gets a
Yay.
little bit of
The
bread.
party.
Yeah, it's time to party. You get a little cheese in there, it's going to be a good time. I like it. A little
Social
wine, a little
distance.
cheese, some crackers. It's a good night. I'm getting hungry. I haven't had dinner yet. Okay. So yeah, but it is that idea, right? Of if we do the right thing, if we have the wisdom, and if we gain wisdom, and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, then we're going to be rewarded. And you think about again how we would like to envision. I'll put it that way, maybe how we'd like to envision the world works, right? That if we do the right thing, if we apply our wisdom and knowledge, we're going to be successful. We're going to work hard. We're going to do right, and we'll have a good. There'll be a benefit to our actions. That if we study and we work hard, there'll be a reward for it, so to speak. There'll be good results from our efforts. Okay, Linda, you're muted. Do you want to read a little more? Up here, do not reject.
Do not reject the discipline of the eternal, my child. Do not abhor God's rebuke. For whom the eternal loves, God rebuked as a father the child whom he favors.
Okay, we're gonna pause you right there. You'll keep going in 1 minute. I hate this line so much. I have to say it. It's one of my least favorite lines in the entire Bible. My skin crawls with it.
You shouldn't favor.
It's this idea over here, the for whom the
Favor.
eternal loves, God rebukes. Only because it has spawned so much god-awful theology. And it's really brutal theology, from this line. The rabbis take it and run with it. But this idea that if you're suffering and if you're miserable and unhappy, it's because maybe God loves you. And God is chastising you for minor sins maybe that you might have done during your life. And God's getting all the bad stuff done now, so you can go straight to heaven when you die. It is just brutal theology, in my opinion, and just this idea of somehow we should love and cherish our sufferings. Which, by the way, you can play with this a little bit and not make it as terrible. I'm just more, reflecting upon the fact that there has been some pretty yucky theology that has come from this idea. There is value. One can easily say, when it comes to our challenges and our struggles and our suffering, you can find meaning in them. That's different, I think, than sort of saying that, God loves you, so you're going to get punished. God loves you, you're going to get, things handed your way that aren't so much fun. I think what it's trying to say, again, is the idea that, I'm dealing with this, of course, with my kids. I'm sure you've dealt with it with your kids, as well. You can't say yes all the time. You can't always indulge. When there's poor behavior, there has to be a correction. There has to be some kind of consequence because that's what part of love is. It's not just unlimited freedom and unlimited everything. There has to be a time where limits are set and guidelines and boundaries established, not because you're trying to be, mean or cruel, but because you're trying to instill some sort of values and lessons. And so I think that's what it's trying to go for, this idea that, it can't be anarchy, there can't be this only permissiveness, but that when things are going wrong, it's like you go to a, God forbid, you have a friend who's going down a wrong path, and you ignore it, and you go, hey, buddy, it's okay that you're, doing all this terrible stuff. You do you, as they say. Or you do you handle it. That's not love. Love is saying, hey, my friend, I see that you are having this problem. You say it, in whatever way it's going to be heard, but you sort of let your critique, your criticism be known, because you want to get them on a better path, on a right path. So I think, again, that's what it's trying to say. Right. I think it's just, again, how
Mhm.
it comes off. Yeah, Bonnie.
But isn't the eternal and God the same person?
Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying.
The eternal loves, then how, if that's God loves, then God rebukes.
Yeah. So whoever God loves, God also rebukes.
Right.
And so that's what it's trying to say, is that's how God shows the love. And it's just like there are ways of making it okay, in terms of, as I mentioned, in terms of how I think what it's going for is the idea of, I think in any loving relationship there should be an aspect of constructive criticism, maybe
Tough love.
tough love, some critique, there, but almost this idea of, if you're suffering, don't worry about it because it means God loves you, is a little bit rough, in terms of a theological opinion. God gives us no more than we can handle.
Mm.
Not really, no.
Mhm.
Sometimes we get more than we can handle.
Right.
I don't know whether God does it or not. That's another
Mhm.
theological conversation for another day. But there's certainly the times when I'm like, I'm suffering so much. Thank you, God. Like, it's not really my. I'm so happy for all of my service.
Right.
That's not coming anytime soon.
Or whatever doesn't kill you makes you better or stronger, right?
So on Sunday, one of my students, this is in confirmation class, one of my students wore a shirt that said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger,
Stronger.
unless it's a bear.
Ah, that's good.
And there was a little more
That's
to
a
it
good
about what it
one.
was.
I
But it's
like
like,
that.
yeah, sometimes it'll make you stronger. Sometimes what doesn't kill you actually makes you fairly weaker.
Mm. That's good.
Okay. Linda, you want to keep going?
Happy is the man who finds wisdom, the man who attains understanding. Her value in trade is better than silver, her yield greater than gold. She is more precious than rubies. All of your goods cannot equal her. In her right hand is length of days, in her left riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths peaceful. She is a tree of life to those who grasp her,
Right.
and whoever holds on to her is happy.
Okay, I'll pause right there. That's sort of a good place to pause. Those last two lines are hopefully a little bit familiar,
Right.
because they are from our liturgy. They are from the Shabbat Torah service, right? After we put the Torah back in the ark. Over here, this line over here is Eitz Chaim Hi. So
Right.
Eitz Chaim Hi l'machazikim ba. V'tomecha me'ushar, so the tree of life to those who grasp
Right.
her, and all who holds on to her. All of the supporters are happy. It's a tree of life. Na, 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 na. Kendra's not here. You got to deal with me.
Mm.
But yeah, exactly right. So that's what we have here. That's Eitz Chaim Hi. And as I mentioned, in the original intention of this text, it wasn't really referring to Torah capital T. It was referring to Torah lowercase t, which is the Hebrew word for teaching, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really about wisdom, about understanding. because wisdom is so important, knowledge is so important, and it is a tree of life. It sustains us. But the rabbis then made it Torah with a capital T, and then use it for liturgy. That it is about the Torah being a tree of life. And it's all of its paths being peaceful and plentiful. Okay, let's finish up chapter 3. Let's keep going on it. Where were we? All is happy. The Eternal founded the earth by wisdom. God established the heavens by understanding. Creation theology, that's there. But the idea that God creates the world, without anything, right? God creates the world ex nihilo. That God creates the world out of nothingness, but God has a blueprint, right? God has ideas, and God creates the earth out of wisdom. The mystics love this line. Talk a little about God's wisdom creating the earth. By God's knowledge, the depths burst apart, and the skies distilled dew. My young friend, don't lose sight of them. Hold on to resourcefulness and foresight. They will give life to your spirit and grace to your neck. Again, adorned very nicely. You can see why, and I know it sounds a little bit repetitious, but that's why they're grouped together, because they have some of the same language, some of the same ideas. So this anthology of anthologies, they're going to use these poems instead of put them together. Then you'll go your way safely and not injure your feet, which is a weird line. It basically means you won't stumble, you won't trip. I went with the literal, you won't injure your feet, but it really means you won't trip, you won't falter, you won't stumble. When you lie down, you'll be unafraid. You will lie down and your sleep will be sweet. My sleep has not been sweet for a long time, I gotta tell you.
Just thinking that.
It's been a little while since my sleep was sweet. I'm sure other people probably have similar similar things. It's been a little while. I don't foresee it getting better, I gotta tell you. I think my day of sleeping sweetly might be a little ways off again. Kai was in bed with me about 4:30.
Oh,
He had a nightmare.
no.
wow.
He had a nightmare.
Oh.
It's almost like if he sleeps till 4:30, that's a win. Because Benji ain't. Sure. Better than
This
it was.
too shall pass.
This too shows. Look, God bless. He
And
sort
you
of
won't
gets
sleep
up
because
and
you'll
he's
know where
not.
they are.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
he wants to let it be known.
That's right.
But he's hilarious. We let him get away with it. He's getting a very funny personality. You can tell already. You will not fear sudden terror or the disaster that comes upon the wicked. God will be your trust. Keep your feet from getting caught. Again, so your feet won't get injured. And here's going to be an interesting little passage here that gets to how we treat each other. I think it's a good place to end it. Do not withhold good from one who deserves it when you have the power to do it. I just love that idea. There's a spectacular midrash, which we'll get to another week. I'll have to remember to it's very visceral, but the idea of the midrash is that, again, if you have a moment to do something good, don't delay it, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
Right.
And that if people might be in need now, and if you have the ability, you have the power to do it, do it. Don't delay. Don't say to your fellow, "Come back again. I'll give it to you tomorrow," if you have it with you already, right?
Right.
Don't devise harm against your fellow who lives with you. Don't quarrel for no cause. And when people have done you no harm, don't look to start fights. Don't envy the lawless, or choose their ways. For the devious man is an abomination to the Eternal, but God is intimate with the straightforward. So there's a certain sense of closeness, of relationship, with those who are doing the right thing. The curse of the Eternal is in the house of the wicked, but God blesses the abode of the righteous. At scoffers, God scoffs, but to the lowly, God shows grace. The wise will obtain honor, but dullards get disgrace as their portion. Anytime the Bible can use the word dullards, my goodness, they really aren't mincing words. So, I would say from this text, you can sort of see how much they are emphasizing of how important wisdom and knowledge is. It's a whole nother lesson. Don't get me wrong, but I'll give you just a little taste of this. Is that at the foundation of Jewish culture and values, and we see it even in the Bible, right? There is a understanding, there's an emphasis on the fact that Jewish, in the Jewish experience, brains matter. Brains and heart sort of matter, not muscles. We do not have in Jewish history and Jewish, culture, and the caveat's going to be coming up in a second. I'll give the exception to this, but for a long time, the idea was, who were the Jewish people? What were they prized for? They were prized for study.
Right.
For being scholastic. You picture the yeshiva buchers, right, like sort of studying in Talmud 10 hours a day, like that's what we imagine sometimes, and it feels sometimes, not all the times, it feels sometimes in Jewish wit and wisdom that's sort of the pinnacle, right? We're supposed to learn, we're supposed to be smart, we're supposed to go to the good schools, we're supposed to be intellectually curious, so to be good in business and career as professionals, right? Not so many Jews in the NFL, right? Like we're not meant to be the big brawny, whatever. That's an exception to the rule. There's only one, right? There's only one in the Bible, right? Of the Jewish Superman, right? And who is that?
Samson.
And what happens to him?
He's
Got
not with
with
us
it. Yeah,
anymore.
girl. Fell in love.
He was a dummy.
Mhm.
And because he didn't have two brain cells to rub together, he winds up making mistake after mistake until he gets blinded and killed. So it doesn't end well for Samson, right? And so that's again part and parcel of the whole conversation, right? He wasn't smart enough to not understand that his muscles weren't going to be it for him, that he had to learn how to keep a secret and maybe not tell his Philistine wife how to kill him. And unfortunately it didn't work out so well for him, right? So the ideal Jewishly has never been muscles and strength and might. It's been brains. That all changed in 1940 something, let's say the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, because we had to settle the land. We had to go out there, and all your yeshiva books mattered exactly exactly zero, because you needed to get a hoe and a shovel and a hat and make the desert bloom. And so you had to work your tails off. And then you had these big, muscular, sort of like, toned and tanned Israelis, that were there. And then the immigrants would come in from Poland, all white and pale. And it caused a lot of tension in Israelite society for a long time, even some repercussions even today. Tangent, I know, but it's still an interesting idea that because in Jewish culture, Jewish ideas, we really valued the brains more than the brawn. And now, like in Israel, it's a little bit more of a mix. The Israel military, IDF, has to have both, both military might, but also the Israeli, the IDF codes, right? The military codes are based on seichel. They're based on common sense more than any other military. It gives Israeli soldiers have more autonomy than any other soldiers, because they are expected to use their brains. They're expected to be able to say, even if a commanding officer says something else, that they're supposed to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe that's not a good idea. If they're in the field and they see something different, they might have to make their own decisions, sort of quickly. And so I just like that idea here that, Proverbs, gives that idea of wisdom, but it's also how you use it as well. That we have to strive for and try to gain wisdom in our lives, and that's sort of the goal, is to be wise. Because after everything else, you can fake other things, but the wisdom is important. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
Good class.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. We're gonna do we'll probably do one more week. I mean, Proverbs is a long book, but I think we'll do maybe one more week on Proverbs. We'll do the aphorisms, which are more fun, frankly, next week. And even though we missed chapter 7, oh well. But you know,
Let's do chapter 7.
I don't want to scandalize you, so you can. But we'll take a look at the aphorisms and stuff next week. That'll be good too. Okay.
Good.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Much.
Thank
See you next week.
See you next
See you
week.
next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.